G'day my fellow media collectors and welcome to the Comic Book Movie Collector's Guide, your show about collecting all things superhero cinema. I'm your host Troy and today we're going to review Injustice on Blu-ray and see if you should add this to your collection. What do you say we get into it?
The Hall of Justice, the Super Friends
are reviewing Injustice, an animated superhero movie with a runtime of 78 minutes. The film was officially released on the 19th of October 2021 on digital download, DVD, Blu-ray and 4K HD. But on the 9th of October 2021, the entire film was illegally leaked online 10 days before its planned release date. It was written by Ernie Altbacker with it directed by Matt Peters. The film was produced by Warner Brothers Animation and DC Entertainment, with it being distributed by Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. It is the 43rd film of the DC Universe animated original movies. This is a standalone movie, however, and is not part of the DC animated Tomorrowverse movies. Okay, if we look at the case, I really like that. You got the Trinity on there, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman. It looks very much like the video game, which is what this is inspired of. I do like the look of it. It does stand out. The artwork it's all right. It could be just a smidge better, but you know. Anyway, on the side, nothing too spectacular. Kind of just blends in a bit, I think. On the back, I love this shot. Very much like the video game as well, but not much else happening there. Okay, if we look at the disc, it's just black, nothing special. It's just a shot of the cover too, no different artwork, which is always a bit of a shame. I feel like they just cheap out on that sometimes. But these ones are kind of mass produced in a way, so I don't think they really look to do too much with them. Overall, look, I don't mind it. Like I said, the artwork could just be dialed up a little better, but overall looks good. And that's why I think I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. So the movie is set in a separate continuity from the main DC universe and follows Superman's descent into madness after the Joker infects him with a modified scare toxin, tricking him into killing his pregnant wife Lois Lane and unknowingly detonating a nuclear weapon that levels Metropolis to the ground. Then the grieving Superman goes on a mission to transform Earth into a police state to enforce the peace, forcing Batman to stand against Superman's new dictatorship as he forms an underground resistance to stop Superman and his allies, to restore world order and to stop Superman's tyrannical reign.
A dictator, you mean? Aye, but a benign, loving dictator.
Now, this story really aims to tackle some big issues through its very tight story and does maybe rush some things trying to get it all into that short 78 minutes. But I still find this story very compelling and engaging throughout, and I think it did a good job of portraying those themes. With its great debate on the whole capital punishment argument, showing the heroes of the Justice League get split down the middle on which side is right and which side is wrong. And of course, what happens to a man who is regarded as the world's moral compass being devastated by the loss of his wife and only child, making him rethink his whole perspective and beliefs on his life and the world around him.
My entire life has been one giant lie.
Now, I found Batman's story arc in this film to be a great counterpoint to Superman's dive into madness, as you end up having Batman who by the end of the story ends up looking at his own life and perspective on things and makes changes to do things differently, with the events that unfold forcing both men to really question their belief systems that they have lived their lives by for so long. It's such a great story to tell, and unlike the comics where you have a bit of time to a time and space to really tell these full stories, this did a great job really in the constraints of its short runtime that it had. Though I did find the ending a little predictable and soft, but I still feel it didn't really take away from the story as a whole, and that's why I'm going to give this a 28 out of 30. Now, this story is mainly based off the video game Injustice Gods Among Us and the comic book Injustice Gods Among Us Year 1 by Tom Taylor. Now, when I do say that it's based off it, it's more loosely based than a true adaptation. Now, I'm familiar with the video games, as me and my daughter Lucy, we've played both Injustice 1 and 2 games on the PS4, and I'm kind of up on most of the story in the game itself, but I have not read the comics, and let's face it, there are a few comics out there to read, and they are held in very high regard by the fans out there, and I feel this is where the film cops some flack because it's not a straight adaptation of those comics. Now, from what I've read, they have changed the ending and a lot of the story is really trimmed down in a variety of things, you know, tweaked here and there, like the characters that die in the comic versions, you know, as opposed to who die in the film.
I didn't see that coming. That's like an explosive twist.
The animation in this film was probably the biggest letdown actually for me. Well, look, okay, maybe not the actual animation, like I'll be a bit more descriptive. It's not so much the animation, that was pretty standard and it flowed all right, but the art style they went with, I found really off-putting in their shading style. That's where I think it went wrong, as it was very heavy and very angular, which made things look different than they were supposed to. As look, I'll show a couple examples up here. Like the first one shows his cheekbones. They look more like sideburns than cheekbones. The second one here, look at the knuckles. The shading looks like they've got all these rings or gloves on. It looks really weird. And of course the third one, if you look at this, the shading on their ribs down here, as my daughter put it when we were watching it, she goes, look at that, Dad, it looks like he's got gills, not ribs. And I have to agree with her. It's not the best art style DC has gone with.
All right, who can define it?
So I'll have the cast list up here, and there's none of the usual suspects here at all, but this is meant to be a standalone film and not part of the new animated DCU. So their choices of different actors make sense to really set it apart. But for me, everyone was kind of good. There was no real letdowns as such. And no one really shined, I suppose. But you did have Justin Hartley as Superman. He was pretty good. I liked him. But I think there are a few standouts, and two of those were Reed Scott as Green Arrow and Gillian Jacobs as Harley Quinn. Both of them did a great job, and they were the most surprising greatest duo you didn't even know you wanted to see. But the real star of the show was Oliver Hudson as Plastic Man. He really stole the show in his performance, and by the way they wrote the character in the story too, with a great mix of dramatic and funny moments throughout, which his performance did so well. So a little bit of mixed bag here with some ups and some downs. So look, for this, I'm probably going to give it a 12 out of 20. So we have a couple of special features on here, and they include Adventures in Storytelling, Injustice, Crisis and Conflict. It is a sneak peek featurette of Reign of Superman and The Death of Superman, and two classic cartoons from the DC Vault, Justice League animated episodes, Injustice for All Part 1 and 2. Now, the main reason to watch this special features is the Adventures in Storytelling, which has the producers and writer sitting down for a full 30 minutes, like in this roundtable discussion on what they did and what they were trying to accomplish with it, with this project. And as I always say, it just gives you just that little bit more insight to pull under the hood, have a look and see what they were trying to achieve with it. And I really do appreciate that. And then, like I said, it also makes you appreciate the story a little more. And as far as the other special features go, they're just recycled sneak peeks of movies that have come out years ago, and just a couple of classic episodes. So nothing too special there, but definitely watch the Adventures in Storytelling. Is definitely worth checking out with these special features. So for pretty much just that alone, I'm definitely going to give this a 5 out of 10. Now, the critic score came in at 60%, and the audience score was, 41%. Look, I've got to say, I am in full disagreement with both those scores. I feel this film deserves a way better score than that, and I think it is being very harshly judged by the fans of the comics with all of them saying it should be longer and all this sort of stuff. Well, how long do you want it to be? 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours? Sometimes you just don't have the luxury or budget to put, you know, all that for that extra time to tell that story. But I feel under the circumstances, they did a great job with the time they had. Anyway, look, those are the scores, and I'm going to have to round it out to a dismal 5 out of 10. So me and my daughter Lucy sat down and watched this movie, and we really enjoyed the movie. And as far as references go, we really only have the video game that we love to play together, but not necessarily the comics. And of course, this is where, as I said before, most of the criticism of the film comes from, which I feel is not completely fair, as even though the film is based on that, it's a different story. It's more as more of a streamlined version of that. So for me, looking at that, you're kind of looking at this as two different takes on the same theme, as opposed to a direct adaptation of that comic book source material. I feel like I was very impressed with what they managed to fit into that 78 minutes, if you know what I mean, which is, even for your average animated movie, is short, don't get me wrong. But I still feel they did a good job of capturing the essence of a larger story at hand. Sure, it would have been great to see more character development, particularly Superman, who really descends into madness pretty quick without much fleshing out. But I still felt his pain, and I still empathized with him. And that's what it was about, you know. Hell, I have to admit this. In the movie, they did such a good job of bringing the feels. I shed a tear when Nightwing died and Bruce was there cradling him on the ground. Oh God, did that hit home.
Are you crying? Am I crying? No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Sure, look, there are a couple of things that could have, you know, been tweaked, but overall, you know, they did the best job they could in the time they had, and that gives a big thumbs up from me. So for that, look, I'm definitely going to give this a score of 18 out of 20. So first up is collectability, and if we look at the collector scale, I would say this would be, I reckon I would go from your novice and up, as this tells a great story that anyone, not even the comic book fans, anyone could understand. But yeah, this is, let's just say, this isn't one for the kids. Now, as far as availability goes, this one is definitely on the common side of things, as this one is relatively newish, and I would say you will have no trouble at all picking up DVD, Blu-ray or 4K HD copies at your usual retail outlets or on your secondhand markets like eBay. Now, as far as your average price goes, you are looking somewhere in the vicinity of between $12 and $20 for DVD. For Blu-ray, you're probably around the $16 to $34 mark. And of course, for 4K HD, you are looking at somewhere between $26 to $44 as of this video. Now, for the final score, we get a grand total of 75 out of 100. Wow. That is a good score for a good movie, a well-deserved score for this film. So look, we asked the question, should you add this to your collection? Yes, by all means, you should add this one to your collection. Whether you're a DC film fan, a DC animated film fan, or just a fan in general of the genre, by all means, you should put a copy of this movie in your collection.
You make a wonderful addition to my collection.
So, if you like this video, I've got some more reviews for you right there. Or maybe you want to see some of my collection updates. Got you covered too. Why don't you click that one there? And of course, don't forget to do the most important thing. Throw me a bat like, and don't forget to hit that subscription button on the way out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.